Welcome back to A Vibe Above. I'm your host, Dawn Ranieri, and today I'm excited to welcome someone who has a big impact on my journey, and his name is Marc Wynn. I first found Marc on Udemy about 2 years ago, where I took a couple of his manifestation courses. Right away, I was struck by how genuine, vulnerable, funny, and how very knowledgeable he was on some of these subjects. And we continue to connect as his journey unfolded. Marc has reached over 20,000 people in 156 countries, with more than 2,000 five-star reviews. What makes him stand out is his ability to explain how life really works, bringing together the spiritual and the practical in a way people can actually test and experience it for themselves. His own story is powerful. After hitting rock bottom, facing financial struggles, health challenges, and depression, he rebuilt his life by uncovering new knowledge that not only solved his problems, but has gone on to help thousands of others. That path has led to his books, his courses, and now the Becoming SuperHuman community, which guides people from living as ordinary humans into unlocking their potential as superhumans. And I know for me, this community has been a godsend. So, Marc, welcome. I am so excited for you to be here today.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here as well.
So, is there anything that I missed that you would like to let the audience know about you?
Um, no, I suppose I've been into this, if I call it spiritual stuff, for, let's see, probably about 30 something years. And when I hit rock bottom, it was the 19th of January 2015. I thought I was some kind of guru, right? Because you think you know everything, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was like, if I know everything, how have I got so many problems? But my problems were just an absolute nightmare, and I had them all at the same time. And the biggest one for me was that I was unable to speak. Literally, I had over 20 operations on my vocal cords, told twice I'd never speak again. I say more than 20, I just lost count. This was over a 12-year period. And life was a nightmare. So when I went back, so having hit rock bottom, I then decided, well, I need to solve this, or I need to go and live in a box underground. And that was a serious option for me because I had insurance cover. And if I could make it look like an accident, then I would have done because it would have been better for the family. I know that sounds a bit morbid, but it's
Mm.
just where your mind is. And so when I went, I decided, no, because I'm a bit of a warrior and I like to fight and solve things. I love challenges. And so I decided I'd go and find out what I was doing wrong. But then what I found out was that a lot of the spiritual knowledge that we accept, because we've been told by certain people who have been told by other people, was actually inaccurate. Some of it was just completely wrong. And it was only by going through that process and then effectively going on a journey that I was able to get to where I am now. And then the unique spiritual knowledge that I've got, which flies in the face of a lot of the knowledge that's out there, um, changes people's lives. And the one thing that I would say, and you've heard me say this before, is never believe a word that I say, right? But never believe a word that anybody says.
Yeah.
You need to go and test it. Because much of the people out there that talk, they just heard somebody else say something and it's like blah, 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 blah. They accept that it's true, like things like free will. Everyone has free will and they can, and this was what I used to say, you can be and do and have anything that you want prior to me hitting rock bottom, because that's what I believed. But when you look at problems in the world, there's billions of people that are struggling. And if everyone's got free will, why is everybody struggling?
Yeah.
So the journey that I went on allowed me to understand so much. And I look back, and for me to be where I am now with the understanding that I've got, and someone says, would you give up all that understanding to never have struggled? And I say, no, I had to go through those struggles to get to where I am. And it's the same for everybody in the world. You are where you are. It's what comes next that is the most important thing. So probably I'd probably throw that in there at the very beginning, because that then opens up a huge subject of different topics that you can touch on to go, well, what is right and what is wrong? Because, we know virtually nothing about how the world actually really works. We think we do, being experts, but that's just blinkers, that we've all got. So where would you like to go from that point?
Let's see. Well, why don't we talk about your superhuman community and then we'll
All right.
touch on some of these other things as well. So what made you want to set up this community?
All right. Well, what I should say is that when I do anything, whether it's courses or write books, I know this is going to sound incredibly selfish. I do everything for me and I do everything to make my life better. And if I know it works, then I'll share it with people. And so the reason why I did the community was because once I'd figured out all the problems I was making and I solved everything, I can talk. Here I am. Um, I decided that this is like this would have been about three and a bit years ago. What was next? And so I said, well, I want to live till I'm 120. Okay, so I'm just about to have my 60th birthday, so I'm halfway there. But I had three conditions. One, that I was physically healthier than I am now. Two, that I had perfectly sharp, agile mind, and my dad's died of Alzheimer's. My two uncles have died of Alzheimer's. So there's all of that in the family. And I said, no, unacceptable. And the third thing, which you know about, but I'm going to mention, is I never want to age, right? I want to stay
Hmm.
looking as I am because I know how to slow down the whole time process. Now, I know that's probably a little bit optimistic, and I'll probably be part of some kind of research thing if I never age. So I'll accept some kind of slowing down. So I said, well, if I want to do that, I need to understand the difference between being an ordinary human, which the vast majority of the population are, and something which I'm going to call a superhuman. So you're one thing or another.
Yep.
And it was like, well, how do I do that? And this is where all the, if you like, the more questions that you ask in life, the more answers that you get. And it's really interesting that when you ask a question, so you're asking that question of yourself, but equally you're asking it of the 99 spiritual world, you get answers. And the one of the few times that you're actually consciously awake is when you're asking questions because you've got enough consciousness to ask a question, whereas most people are completely asleep, daydreaming, wandering through their days, that they never ask why is this and why is that, and what would happen if I crossed the road here as opposed to up there.
Hmm.
And so I said, well, I want to shift to being superhuman. What is superhuman? What is the difference between it? And that's where then suddenly you start to get a huge understanding of the difference between what people think life is about and what life is actually about. And the way I would describe that is when we're born, this is most people, not everybody, you have 1% of your soul, which is the 1% of your consciousness with your mind and your body. And the object is to increase that level of consciousness going up, which I can define for the people that are watching. Because a lot of gurus go, oh, you need consciousness. But if you ask them what it is, they just rabble on and they never explain. So what I'll say is consciousness is spiritual maturity, but it's measured in the amount of soul with your mind and your body. So if you've only got 1% soul, 1% consciousness, it's like looking at a very big picture, but you can only see 1% in the middle. But that 1% we call life, and we think it's everything. But it means that you're missing the other 99%. So even if you had 10% consciousness, you only see 10% of the picture and you miss the other 90. So the more consciousness you get, the more the blinkers come off and suddenly life changes altogether. So the world that we think is normal in front of us is actually an illusion that we create because we can only see what we see with the blinkers that we've got. And it just means that the journey to becoming superhuman is vast, but the more that you see, the better your life gets.
Hmm.
I use this example of ladders. So if you have a ladder, imagine a ladder by the side of the house. if you're on the first rung, which is like 1% consciousness, the view's rubbish. But what you see is what you see. And if you went up to, say, the fifth rung, suddenly you've got a much better view and a much better understanding. So that's your spiritual maturity, is going up these rungs. So when you get, say, to the 10th rung, suddenly everything on the 10th rung means that what you thought you knew and saw on rung one is completely wrong. And so the more consciousness, the more you go up this ladder, the more of an understanding that you get. So if you get to, say, the 20th rung, you might have a completely different understanding to how life works, because you can now see 20% of life. And it's this, if you like, logical explanation, which I find fascinating, to life and the spiritual world, because I always thought spiritual stuff was all right-brained, intuitive, and it was all out there. But it turns out that it is that, and is completely left-brained, and it's logical, and it's
Mm.
process-driven, and if you like, a flow chart, and you can explain it. So what you've got to do is get more consciousness, and then you shift from having no control over your life, being an ordinary human, to having a lot more and a lot more and a lot more, being a superhuman. And the reason why I like the ladder um, type explanation is because all the problems in life are on the lower rungs. That's not easy to say, is it? So, so for example, if the problems are all, say, from rung six downwards, if you get to seven and eight and nine, your life gets better. And your life can only be one of two things. You can only be wet or dry, or happy or sad, or have money, have no money. So you either have problems or you have no problems. No, you can't be a bit wet. You're either one or the other.
Right.
So as you go up that ladder, you leave all the problems behind. And so I set up the community, having gone through this whole process, having written the first book that comes with it, to try and help people, because I've got all of these 20,000 odd people that I've helped with the courses, but I don't have any direct access to them. So I wanted to create a community that helped everybody every day solve their problems, make their life better, but in a way that they could judge themselves. So they saw every single day, or every single week, that their life is better. And so this is why I created it. But if you like, the community is my personal journey, and you've probably seen this.
Mm.
So it's totally different to every other community. So none of the information, most of the information that's in it, is totally different to what other people see. Because, as I said, never believe a word I say, test what I say, self-verify it. And when you see it working for you, because I know it works for me, then you're like, right, this works. I'm going to do it more. And that's the important bit. Never believe a word that anybody says. I don't care how important that guru is, or they
Yeah.
think they are. You have to test it. And if they're unable to answer things like, what is consciousness, or justify why free will exists, then you've got to question where they're getting their information from. And so the whole idea of the community was basically to help people, because I know there's a lot of problems coming in our world just because of the cycle that we're on.
Hmm.
And so if the more I can help people, then the more I'm, I suppose, purposefully living the life I should be living.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Um, and I agree with you. And I've always said the same thing to people, like, don't just believe me. Does what I say resonate with you?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't resonate, them doing it is not going to get them into a better place.
Yep.
It's got to feel right for them. Another question that popped up in my head was, is there anything that you can share on how people can raise it? I don't even know if I want to use the word raise their consciousness, but just kind of open that consciousness maybe up from that 1% to even 2%, 3%. What would be something that you could easily maybe give like a tip or something for them to, you know,
Yeah.
get a taste of what's in this community?
Okay. So the single most important lesson, I suppose there's always lots, but the one that always comes to my head, and this is one that you'll see time and time and time and time again is correct, is you've got to be excited to be alive. Okay. And rather than these people you see on television go, oh God, gee, I'm excited and I'm excited. Really, you take the camera off them and then
They're not excited.
they got all sorts of issues, right? They got all sorts of problems and they're worried about this and worried about the other. And so, like, when you're, as I said before, when in life, and this will be my most important lesson because it's the one that meant the most to me. If you imagine like a water line, and like if you're in the sea or something, and below it is this place called fear. Now, most people spend most of their time in fear. They're worrying about bills, they're worrying about their relationships, they're worrying about social media and how do I look, and they're worried about their jobs and getting, it's just life. People's brains sit in this fear zone. But above the waterline, there's this place called excited. And excited is where you genuinely love your life. You love all the small aspects. You might, I don't know, you get excited about seeing a flower, you're excited to have a coffee, excited to be on this podcast, you're excited to wake up, you're excited to be alive. And you can only be one thing or another, as I was saying earlier on. So you're either down here or you're up here. So up here it's like you're flying, you're free.
Hmm.
Down here it's like you're drowning. But when you look at the vast majority of people, and I would say that to anybody watching this, whether that's in the supermarkets, they're walking down the street, they're in the gym, they're on a bus, a train, most people are, they're miserable. They are genuinely miserable. There is no life to them. And when you look at a person's face, you'll see it in their eyes in
Yeah.
terms of whether they are alive or not. I mean, there's also a way of knowing which of the two eyes they lie out of as well, right? So which eye causes them all the problems. And I can tell you when you're looking at someone how you know that. And so when I used to have my problems, I used to wake up and first thing I did was I'd go into this fear zone. Am I going to get paid? How am I going to pay this bill? And it was horrible because I'd have a horrible night's sleep. And this is going to sound pretty disgusting, but most of the nights I would really, this is going to sound terrible, but here we go. Right. I would sweat and I'd have to wake up and wring out my pajamas because my mind was still engaged in the fear
Mm.
stuff. And I used to run a little kind of competition to see whether I could go a day or 2 days, or maybe even three, without having to do that ringing out thing. And sometimes I could, and sometimes I couldn't. But I then saw the relationship between when I woke up, I would go straight into the fear zone. And all I'm doing is I'm down here. But as you know, what you focus on, you attract back into your life. Now, that's a bit kind of woo-woo,
Yes.
right? But the world's created like a
I
mirror.
don't believe in woo woo. Woo woo doesn't exist.
Yeah, I can promise you it does exist, but not in our lives. But the world's created like mirrors. So what you're putting out is reflected back. So if you lie, people lie to you. If you cheat, people cheat because you create your own world.
Hmm.
So what I was
Hmm.
doing was creating more and more and more problems. And then when the problems came along, I'd go, see, I told you it would never happen. Now I'd see this would go wrong. But when I suddenly realized and I shifted and I went into the excited zone, so I would do things like I would set my alarm and it would go off on the hour. So 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 or 12. And I'd stop and I would do a number of different things. I still do this now. So I'd either think about the things that made me excited and try and get that energy back in, and it would lift me from the drowning zone, the fear zone, up to here. Or I would on my phone, I've got certain like humorous programs. In the UK, it's like Only Fools and Horses and something else called Bottom, where there's short clips. So I'd watch one of those for like 60 seconds and I'd be rolling around with laughter. And because you do one thing or another, you've gone from there, laughter, you're up in the excited zone. Or I'd have music, and music really lifts the soul. So you put on some
Hmm.
music, dance around like a raving idiot just for a minute, and then you're up here. So the more time you're up here in the excited zone, the more good things that can come into your life. When you're down in the fear zone, you just block it. It's like a door. So you hear me talk about doors. So if you imagine your front door, if you bolt it shut because you're in the fear zone and you're living in the fear zone, all the deliveries you get from Amazon can't get to you because you've got the door bolted shut. But when you're in the excited zone, the door's open, and it means that the spiritual world, the 99, can get more things into your life. And then the more things that come into your life, the more excited you get, and the more excited you get, the more stuff comes into your life, and then the door gets bigger. And then this whole cycle starts to continually grow, that suddenly your life is so much better than down here, and you've got a choice. And that takes you on to kind of like the second part. Everything in life is a choice. You know, a lot of people love living in the fear zone. They love moaning about the problems. You know, they love moaning, oh, woe is me, and this has gone wrong. And they'll never change because they love that. They love all those problems and they'll stay down there. There's nothing you can do about helping those kind of people. But when you shift and you're actually genuinely excited, it's like it frees you up. And so this ability to be excited as much of the time as you can starts to increase your consciousness. Because as I said earlier on, when you ask questions, in that moment, you have consciousness and it's open, the door's open because you're able to think. Because our minds are like a pendulum. What have I got? Yeah, I've got my pendulum here. You remember this from the last bit of filming I did. I know it's a thermometer, but just bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so our minds swing from things in the past to things in the future to things in the past. And our mind's constantly doing this. But if it stops, it's what people call the now. And so when your mind is calm, it just means that you've got some conscious thought and you can create things to happen. But if your mind's constantly worried about this and constantly thinking about that, it just fries and you get absolutely nowhere. So this bit about being excited is really, really important because it shifts you from where you shouldn't be to where you should be. And then your whole life gets better because you're excited, you suddenly start to see a world around you that you never saw before because you were so worried about this and that, and your mind was kept on thinking and going boom, boom, to boom, to boom. So whether it's the bird singing, a flower, you know, people waving at you in a car, you'd have never seen them before, and suddenly so your consciousness, because it's gone up, is taking the blinkers off a little bit more. So it's gone from 1% to 2% to 3%, and you start seeing a completely different world to the one that you thought was actually real. So that's
Yeah.
if you want one really important thing is to be genuinely excited to be alive and excited in as many moments of the day as you can be.
No, I think that was probably the best one that you could have said because I feel like that's definitely shifted me. And even when I work with people and we do intentions, it's
Yeah.
always it used to be I'm happy and grateful. Now it's I'm excited and grateful,
Oh,
which I
amazing.
think is yeah, it which is I think it takes it to such a whole other level. Um, so why is it important for people to make a big effort to improve their lives?
Oh, right. So there's probably a number of reasons. If you've got a life where you've got a fair amount of problems, why do you want to continue living that life?
Hmm.
So, so talking about that ladder thing, if you are below, say, rung 6, for example, and you're experiencing this problem and experiencing that, whether it's mental health, physical health, relationships, money, why is it acceptable when you have a choice to stay in that place? Why would you want to do that? A lot of people, as I said, do because they love the problems, and you'll never change it. So if I gave you a choice and said you can stay as you are, or there is a way that you could leave all the problems behind, what would you do? You'd imagine that most people would go, right, magic, right, I'm on board, Mark. How are we going to do this? So that's, if you like, one reason. The second reason is, and this is where we have this kind of falseness that comes into the world. So I'll let everybody judge this for the um, how they want to, but our destiny. So either destiny is real or destiny is false. So in other words, if I believe our destiny is totally fixed, which means that when you're born, your path in this life is completely laid out for you. All the people you meet, you're always going to meet them. The problems you're going to have are always going to happen. The decisions you're going to make are all the decisions you're going to make. If relationships end, they're always going to end. Why get upset? The new people you're going to meet, and it's what you're always going to meet. And so destiny is fixed. And because destiny is fixed, it means that if you want, say, something like, I don't know, to get more money, if your destiny says that you will never ever have any money, and you'd go, well, I'd have to resign myself to that fact. Why would you want to do that when if you could increase your consciousness, you could then have enough consciousness to change your destiny?
Hmm.
So, so having a fixed destiny, but we don't know what our destinies are. In the UK, there's a saying that nurses use that when you were born, there's a date that's been stamped on your bum, and that's when you die. And there's that is just the fact. You will physical body will pass when it's meant to pass. And I've I know this is true because everything that I speak to you about is something that I've tested and I've been able to, I suppose, go through a process of knowing that it's right. And I was fortunate enough to meet probably the only walking avatar that I've ever met, an Indian chap called Imaho. He described it totally differently, in terms of when you get an arrow, it goes up and it comes down, and that represents your life, and where it lands, and there's nothing you can do about it. Unless, of course, you get enough consciousness, and then you can change the direction of the arrow and it can land somewhere else. So you're asking me about the reasons why you want to do this. Third reason is everything in our world runs in cycles. And so our society that we're in at the moment runs in a cycle in the same way that the Romans did, the Greeks did, the Mayans and the Incas. And let's see if I can do this the right way around. So every society evolutes, which means it gets better and better and better and better. And there's loving and sharing and caring. And it's absolutely amazing. There's no stealing, there's no violence, there's no nothing. Then it reaches a peak. Then it comes down the other side. And this is called involuting. And the world gets worse. And the problems get bigger. And people stop caring. And they get greedy. And everything gets controlling. But all the problems get worse. And if you look at how the world has shifted in the last even 2 years, the problems have magnified and they've also multiplied. So we're now living in a world of coming down this way of chaos and collapse, where things just around the world are terrible, but will get an awful lot worse. Now, there's nothing we can do about that because it's just the cycle that we're on until we reach a point where things do collapse in different ways. However, if you've increased your consciousness enough, so going up this ladder thing again, then you're going to be able to sidestep or avoid problems that previously would have had some sort of impact on your life. So let's say there's a monetary issue of some sort that affects our economy and people are struggling, but because you've gone high enough up, increasing your consciousness, you're okay. And that's, if you like, another reason why it is so important that people pay attention to this. Because as I said, never believe a word that I say. Go and check for yourself. Go and have a look everything that's happening in the world. And it's just like one great big jigsaw. And you can put the bits together and you can literally see not what's coming, but you can see that things are getting worse. And they're going to continue to get worse. And as I said, there's nothing that anybody can actually do about it except for working on themselves. And therefore so you can have total chaos around you. But at the same
Hmm.
time, because of the spiritual knowledge that you've got, you're smiling and happy, and everyone else is just kind of losing it. So those are the reasons I would say this is like so important. Or you do nothing and you just it's like a tsunami. I remember there was the one in Indonesia, and there was a story of a young girl standing on the beach, and with a tsunami, it sucks all the current out. And she was standing on the beach and she said to her parents, "Oh, that's unusual. We were reading about that in geography. And when the waves get pulled out, it means there's a much bigger wave coming." And the parents went, "Oh," and they dived off the beach, ran up to the hotel, got as many people as they could together in their cars, and they drove away and got up to the hills. Well, the tsunami came in and just like devastated everything. Um, and if you can see it coming, you have a choice. Stay on the beach. Oh, look, there's a
Right.
big wave. There's a big wave coming. What are we going to do? It's too late. or you do something about it. It's the same as like, do you want to live in fear, or do you want to be excited about your life and it's fun and it's exciting and it's joyful and you've got great friends and great relationships? It's a choice. What do you do? And this is why people have lost the ability to, if you like, make that choice, and the vast majority of our world lives in this, fear-based, miserable world down here, and they'll just get washed away when everything happens. And it's just the way it is. But as you have a choice, and it's
Yeah.
what are you going to do? And you can change your life instantly, literally in a second. Because that's the other thing. Because when you ask me about important lessons, the other one I was going to mention was control. Fundamental is control, having control over your life. And what people do is they give control of their lives away to other people and organizations without realizing it. So like you'll have signed up to the same social media conditions I have, right? Slave. We're
Mhm.
just a slave. We've given control of our lives away to people that can track us. They know what we watch, they know what we say, they know where we've been, but we've given it all away, and they hold thousands of pieces of data on us and can sell us whatever they want. But obviously, they can use that information for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Control away to the doctors because there's a reason why we have a pain or we have an illness, and it's something that you can fix yourself. But we just run down to the doctors and give us some more pills. So we control away to them. Instead of fixing our money, we go and borrow more money. We just stick it on the credit cards. Okay, we'll be fine. So we give control of our money away. Relationships. I had one of them where I was unable to be myself to keep the relationship going. So I gave control away to the other person. So we constantly do this in all different forms. And it's only when you take control back, because I was doing this, there's a 20-second exercise that I created for myself, that you take control back. It takes you again from this fear zone into the excited zone because you feel powerful and strong. Because when you're in fear, you're hunched up, your head's down, life's hard, it's difficult, and you can either stay there and feel the pain, or you take control back and you go into the excited zone. And that 20-second exercise I've got shifts you immediately. So it can be done, and it can be
Yeah.
done immediately. A lot of people won't do it because the people that've got a lot of mental health issues, the vast majority won't do it because they're so lost in that pain.
I always say with fear, face everything and rise,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
There's a great quote in, I don't know if you've ever seen there's two of them out. I think there's a third one out. There was a book called Dune, Dune, by Frank Herbert, and they made it into
Hmm.
films recently. And I've read, I think it's about 7 or 8 books, probably most of them at least 2 or 3 or 4 times. And there's a quote in there, and it says, "I will face my fear. I will let my fear approach me. My fear will wash through me, and when it's gone, I'm the only one that's left." And it's true because I think
Yeah.
statistically, the scientists say that about 90% of the things that we worry about never happen. Can you
Right.
imagine that?
I know.
90% of
It's
the stuff
crazy.
that you worry about never happens. Why worry? Why
Right.
would you worry?
And in the meantime, we're creating these situations to happen, you know, by worrying about it all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
crazy.
so to me, this is all, how was I going to use the word? Common sense.
Hmm.
This is the kind of knowledge I put out there, and you can call it spiritual or you can call it whatever you like. But to me, it's just common sense, and I just take it for granted. That everybody knows all these things, um, but it turns out that most people don't. But everything that I talk about, there's a technique or there's something that you can do that takes the logical process of how it all works into a way that you can just go like that. Oh, boom! I can change something, and then because
Yeah.
you feel that much better, you're like, right. I've now got a choice to make. Do I want to continue feeling like that? Or do I want to go back to how it was, when it was horrible and rubbish? And it's just a way of shifting things. Because our lives could be significantly better than what they are, even at the moment. Way, 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 way better. And this is why this journey from being an ordinary human, I suppose you're looking at it this way around, from an ordinary human to being a superhuman, is constantly getting better and 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 better. And it just keeps on going up and up and up. And that's
Yeah.
something that you can judge. Well, you know it yourself because you're living proof of how much better your life could get. And no matter how good it is, I mean, let's say you had 20% consciousness, that is fantastic. But you're only at 20% of how good it could be. It could be 5 times better than that. You're like, oh, your life
Hmm.
is already 20 times better than if you had 1% consciousness. And this is what I find fascinating about this is that if someone says, can you imagine your life being 20 times better? The answer is no, because how can you imagine that? How can you imagine how good that feels? The energy you would have, how much healthier your body would be, how much clearer your mind would be, how much better your friends would be. It just, I think it's staggering. We have this phenomenal opportunity as humans to create a massive shift in our lives individually. And all the answers are there. You just have to bring them in. And the spiritual world, and this is the important bit, is so, so keen to help you. Like 24/7, 365 days of the year, whether you're awake during the day or you're asleep in your bed, they will help you unconditionally. But if your door's shut, you never, because you're living in fear, you're never going to get the messages. Whereas if your doors open a bit, it's like I say, like if you got 1% consciousness, it's like being in a dark room and the door's open by 1%. You're in this room and you can't see and you're falling over things and you're making mistakes. But you got very little light, that's a bit corny, coming in. If you had 20% consciousness and doors open 20%, that light allows you to work your way around the room that much better. You've got so much more good things that you can see, so many of the bad things you will avoid. And this is why this all knits together, perfectly, one great big jigsaw. And so if you can just keep on improving things, your the stuff that comes into your life from the mob upstairs just gets better and better. And then all they want to do is like give you more. You realize where it's come from, get excited, and give you more again. And the whole idea is to evolve. So you go from, say, 1% up to, well, 100% would be you'd be fully conscious. I mean, that's just the ultimate. But the more you can get, the better your life gets. And it's just simple, it's just obvious.
Now I have a question. You just gave me something else
Yeah,
to
well,
ask you. Could could somebody get to could they get to 100% in one lifetime?
yes.
Okay.
And there'll be people walking around right now that you'll see in the street that might be in beggars' clothes, that might be 100% conscious, but because they are so conscious, there's no need for all the materialistic things.
Hmm.
They're, if you like, helping people in their way. And these people that are 100% conscious could be completely around us. Well, I know they are at the moment, and their lives are just amazing, but we can't necessarily see them because our consciousness is that much lower. We don't appreciate who they are. So it is possible to do it, um, but it takes a bit of work. Okay, and it just means you've got to cut, if you like, your beliefs to how life actually works by looking at different beliefs and then testing them. But if you wanted to, I believe it is possible. Will I get to it? I think it's probably unlikely. I'll give it a good go. Um, but if I got 60 or 70% there, how much better my life would be. This,
Hmm.
if you wanted to, would take us on to the groundhog loop. And I don't know if you want to go into that bit or you've got some other questions you want to ask before that.
No, feel free.
All right. So I ask people this question: what is deja vu? Right now, I know you're probably, you know what I'm going to say next. But what would you say most people would answer is deja vu? You know, the ability to go, I know that person. I've been here before. I remember this. So, what do you think most people think deja vu is?
Yeah, I think just what you said. I mean, for me, I know like I'll go somewhere, maybe we'll visit somewhere, and I'll just get this feeling like exactly like I've been there before, or
Yeah,
maybe not in this lifetime. That's a whole other thing, but
yeah.
it feels like I feel this energy that just kind of engulfs me.
So the explanation I'm going to give you is one that I have never ever seen anywhere else. So it's one that I would say to people, just have a think about first. And the way it works is our present life, so ignoring all the previous lives, runs on a loop. And it's a bit like the Bill Murray film Groundhog Day, right? You've seen Groundhog Day, yeah?
Hmm.
Yeah, with Bill Murray, right? And he wakes up and it's 7 o'clock and the alarm goes off and gets up, and then everything that happens has happened to him the previous day. And then the day finishes and he wakes up and it's 7 o'clock and the alarm goes off and it's the same people on the radio saying the same things. And suddenly he realizes he's in this loop every day. Doesn't matter what he does, same things happen, always ends, wakes up 7 a.m. And our lives work exactly in the same way. So this present life we've got has a destiny that's fixed, going round in a circle. You know, we're born, everything that happens is predestined, and then when we die, is the point that our physical bodies die. And then at some point we'll then start that loop again, and the same things will happen. And the reason why it works that way is because what we're supposed to do is to realize that this is happening. So that means anybody that's watching this has seen this before, right? They've heard me say this before.
Yeah.
Oh no, light bulb go. So this loop that we're on, you and I, everybody, we've been on this same loop so many times, but we have never developed enough consciousness in the previous loop to break out of that loop or to come back fully conscious. So because our destiny is fixed, all the problems that have happened in our lives was always going to happen, right? There's no point in getting upset. You know, you're in a relationship now, it ends. So what, right? It was always going to end. There's no point in getting upset and getting emotionally tied into it. That's a spiritually immature thing to do. You just know that it was going to end, and then you look for the positives and move forward. So if you're developing more consciousness, it means that on this loop that we're on, when something happens, you can make a different decision to the one you made in the previous loop because you've now got more consciousness. So I've
Hmm.
made, I don't know, there's maybe three or four things in my life. I've made really bad decisions that have caused me serious problems and have created all sorts of problems for other people as well. And so if I get to the end of this loop and I start the loop again, those same things are going to happen. But next time, because I've got consciousness, I will know what's coming, and I will know that I can make a different decision when those problems happen. And by making a different decision, my life gets better. So when you go, what's deja vu? Because everything is running on a loop, it means that you get into certain points and you go, I remember being here. I remember that person. And of course you do, because you saw them, you met them, you're in that place on the last loop. So these loops are constantly running all the time. And because of that, it means that all the problems I've had in my life, I had in the previous loop. But this time they got worse, as in the previous loop, excuse me, every time this loop's running. And so I want to come back with a lot more consciousness. So I'm aware of everything that's around me so that when something happens, I can go, well, last time I reacted that way and it caused so much grief. This time I'm going to do it differently. So an example would be somebody breaks into your house, um, you're unhappy about it. The following week, you go around to their house and you punch their lights out, you get arrested, you lose your job, you get into financial debt, you lose the house. or because you went around there and you reacted. If you had more consciousness, then you would change what you did. They break into your house, but you handle it totally differently. You would never lose your job, you'd never get arrested, and you'd never lose the house, the mortgage, whatever. And so this is why consciousness going up the ladder, everything ties together. And you kind of go, oh, it's like an instruction manual, right? And it all is. It's just like it's so obvious.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is what I call the groundhog loop. Now, what's interesting is you've got this life, you've got previous lives that are running simultaneously on a loop. So one maybe 100 years ago, another one 200 years ago, another one 300 or 400 years ago, whatever. So you've got all of these running in, like, if you like, a kind of cylinder going up the way. So time, rather than being linear like that, actually runs this way. And so your previous lives are all running exactly in the same way. And if you can get enough consciousness in any one of those previous loops, or your future loops are running as well, just to kind of, if you like, kind of expand this. So your next life, whatever you're doing, is running at the same time as this life. So they're both running like this.
Hmm.
And so the whole idea is, if you can, because it's the one reason why we're here, is to get enough consciousness that you can either break out of that loop, or you come back with so much more consciousness that you can then help other people, right? So you never punch the guy that came and broke into your house. You've got so much consciousness, he's going to come around and do it. You stand outside and say, excuse me, um, the last thing you want to do is to break into this house. He doesn't break into the house. There's no repercussions for him. And suddenly,
Well, you get a security system.
yes, you could do that. There's a big warning light that goes off outside. You could do it that way. And that's why we're here, to try and change things in a way that makes our lives better, but can then have an impact on other people's as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and the more consciousness you've got, the more, if you like, balanced you are in your decision making. Because emotionally, as humans, we're very immature. Spiritually, we're very immature. We're like 4-year-old children. And if you watch them at nursery and they're running around and they think they know everything, but you're like, oh no, he's going to run into that chair, bang, hits the chair, and you're like, I knew that was going to happen. But we're like those children that are running around that think we know everything about everything, but our parents that are watching, that have got so much more maturity, know the difference. And that's the spiritual world watching on, giving it, oh, I can see exactly what's going to happen here. And it does, because we react. We just emotional beings, and we react. So like one of the skills to becoming superhuman is to be non-reactionary. So when something happens and you get an email, you're being insulted by somebody or someone's having a go, is to know why that's happening. And then rather than react, you kind of stand back and go, okay, I'm going to think about this. And rather than putting your energy into the situation and causing a bigger problem, you step back from it, and then the whole thing calms down. Suddenly the issue that was there is no longer there. But that's only from gaining more consciousness that you're able to do that, because you've got more control over your life.
Hmm.
And get more excited because you realize that you have this control, and then you can start to steer your life. The difference between being in two boats in the middle of the sea, and one has no rudder and goes off in mad, crazy directions, and one that has a rudder that you can point in the direction that you want. So, as I say, everything is, in my world, it's really sensible, and it's really easy to understand. And when you look at everything that's out there, that's probably not very fair, but the vast majority of stuff that's out there is very convoluted, it's confusing. You've got all the woo-woo stuff, you've got all the inaccuracies, and this is the bit I failed to get, is why we as humans were never given an instruction manual. You get a washing machine, it tells you how to work it. It
Hmm.
tells you all the dials do and which button to push. A video recorder. But we don't have that for humans, right? And that's why I put the Becoming Superhuman project together, the community in the book, to create an instruction manual that made it obvious what everything was and how everything linked together. And then it's just a question of then saying, well, okay, well, if that's right, I'm going to go and test it. And then I'm going to do this exercise. I'm going to do this technique that Mark's given me. And then you can judge it. And then, as I say, it's a jigsaw, and all the bits then start coming together. And it is incredibly logical, all of
Hmm.
it.
Yeah,
You know,
I can attest to that.
yeah. And so that's the groundhog loop, and that's why it's so important. That's just another reason why, why living a life full of any form of pain or problems or hassle or grief. Life should be the complete opposite. You should wake up
Yeah.
in the morning, you're like, yeah, a great day ahead of me. Then a problem comes along and you're like, nah, you know, it was, it just problems just disappear. They vanish. And suddenly life gets better and better and better and better and better. And then you start thinking of things, which is where the manifestation side of things comes in, and it starts happening. And you're like, oh, I created that, but it's come from the guys upstairs because your connection, you've thought about it, they've brought it through your open door, it's come into your life, and then you realize how the whole thing's connected. And you're like, oh, that's fantastic, this. And suddenly it's a game, but it becomes fun. And life should be fun. But for most of us,
Yeah.
it can be full of grief and hassle and problems, and then we focus on all of those, and it just gets worse.
Yep.
Our minds are swinging around like this, and it's like everything just goes out of control. When you bring it back in, it's calm, it's enjoyable, it's fun, and that's what life's meant to be about.
Yeah, and I think if people really want to have that massive shift, coming into this becoming superhuman community would
Yeah.
be so beneficial for them. Mark, can you let everyone know where they can find you?
Yep. It's becomingsuperhuman.online, which will take you to the landing page. There's lots of videos on that will walk you through everything that's in the community. Every Monday we do a spiritual lesson, which is my opportunity to let my creative mind go a little bit mad, as Dawn will tell you about. Um,
Hmm.
I call it a lesson together, but I try and do it in a very funny way. No AI, no AI at all, because I've got my views on AI and it's just going to be the end of the world. And I just make it really, really fun. And then off the back of that, there's an action plan that gets people to do things. Lots of other things that we do during the week, but it's just light-hearted, easy, and it's just great fun. So that's the URL for it.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I always wake up excited and grateful, but if you're not in that mood and you go to watch one of these videos, you will be laughing hysterically and your whole mood's going to change anyway.
Try and make it as funny as I can. Um, it depends because I've got different characters, as you know, I
Hmm.
bring in from time to time, and it's just trying to make them entertaining. Because life, as I said, life should be fun. It's meant to
Yeah.
be fun. So also probably mention anyone that wants to join. You get 14 days and give it a go, right? Free trial, no obligations. You can, because all my courses, they're in there. The books I've written, you get those in there as well. So there's no upselling. I hate upselling. Oh, it really drives me nuts.
Hmm.
Get something and then the people treat you like you're idiots.
You got like five more pop-ups coming up.
Oh, like you buy this,
It's
that, and
crazy.
this was $45,000 and you can buy it for 47. And you're like, nah, treat me like an idiot now. So I put everything in there for one cost, which is $67 a month. But Dawn twisted my arm and said, can you give my people a discount? So I said, of course I can. So there's a 30% discount where it's down to 47. Still get the free trial and all that. And Dawn, you can hand over all the um, information and details on how they can get that afterwards.
Yep, I'll do that in the show notes.
Yeah, so I just believe people should give things a go. You could do all of my courses. There's a resource library. You could look back through all of the videos over the last few months and then still not join. And it still costs you nothing because I think life, we should be helping each other. It's one of the reasons why we're here is to help each other. And all this is going to cost you X and this is going to cost you Y and this is going to cost you Z or Z or whatever. Totally disagree with. totally disagree with it all. And we want to live in a world that is totally different to that. And I think unless you reshape it yourself, which is what I'm trying to do, and make things like affordable and just throw everything into the one pot. So I've got a new money creation course, which is the editing is just being finished, which is about to be added to it. You haven't seen that yet, Dawn. Um, and rather than me go and sell that for like $300 or $400, I'll put it into the community, and you can just do it at your own leisure. With the other courses that are in there. There's all sorts of other things, solution centers and things that are in there. If you want specific problems and master classes that you want to solve a certain problem, it's all in there. You just go and pick what you want to watch. It's all short, to the point, and powerful. And it's there as I suppose, a resource for you to have a second home, to lighten up your life, to make your life better. And that's why Becoming Superhuman, I think, is aptly titled, because that's what you do. You're on a journey to become something that is much more than what you are at the moment.
I love it. And yes, it's very reasonable. It's definitely worth it. You don't have to stress about putting a lot of money out to make your health and life better, which is amazing. Mark, is there anything that we did not touch on that you would like to mention before we go?
Um, there's probably 101 things. I think probably the best thing to do is to um, leave it where we're at, and then the 101 things we can then include on maybe another one, and maybe go
Yep,
into some other things like how do you escape the matrix, that we live in. So there's a whole raft of other stuff that's on there, which I think people would love to know, because they've got questions about different things, but no one's given them an answer. So I'll give you an answer, but allow you then to test it. So I
love
just
it.
want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I think this has been great fun. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity of being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for all your wisdom. And I know this is going to inspire so many people. So thank you very
Lovely.
much.
Lovely. Thank you, Dawn.